Hello and welcome to the Distant Tourist Podcast. My name is Robert.
And I'm Thomas.
And in this podcast, we look at the different prefectures of Japan, 47 in total. And each week we look at a different prefecture. We research the history, the culture, the food, and any interesting locations that we find. And in this week's episode, we're going to look at Kagawa. Thomas, do you want to tell the audience what you found this week?
Yes. So Kagawa is the smallest prefecture on Shikoku. And to give you kind of an understanding about it, Shikoku is one of the four major islands of Japan. Japan is not just one big island. It's sectioned into four different islands and is scattered with all these different prefectures on them. Shikoku has four prefectures, Shi being the number 4 and Koku being land. So it pretty much means four lands on this area.
What a literal translation.
Yes. So it is towards the southern tip of Honshu. Honshu is like the longer one that has Tokyo, Kyoto, all those major cities on it.
Yeah.
And then Kagawa has a lot of smaller islands on them. It has just a huge amount of small islands, and actually there is an island that I believe you're going to be talking about later on.
Ah, yes, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes. So the one thing I definitely did want to mention is that Shikoku in general, talking about that, there is a pilgrimage trail called the Henro. And this it goes all the way around Shikoku. It is a trail that pretty much goes from shrine to shrine.
Is this kind of like a lap, or is it like start one location, ends at a different spot?
You start in Tokushima,
Okay.
the prefecture just below Kagawa. And then what you do is you get a little it's not a stamp book, but it kind of is. It's like a Buddhist stamp book.
Oh.
So you go to each temple and you pay your respects. And there is 88 in total. And the last one is in Kagawa.
Oh, okay.
Kagawa is the finishing point for it. The pilgrimage itself is actually something I definitely want to do in the future. It takes 6 weeks to do if you're walking.
Oh.
Yes.
So it's a very, very long kind of...
Well, you got to think it goes all the way around this island.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I wasn't sure if we were talking like inland lap or outside lap.
But there is some people that kind of take a chartered bus. That takes 9 to 12 days to do.
Oh, okay.
And then some people go by car, like rent a car and then just do it. Which, for me personally, I'm also a hiking kind of guy. I do backpacking in my free time. So I'd rather do the hiking, the walking.
Yeah.
I kind of maybe do the bus if you can't really do it, if you're just physically unable to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know about renting a car. It'd be quite expensive.
It seems like it takes the wind out of that journey in some sort of way.
Exactly. And so actually while doing the pilgrimage, you do have a certain attire you're supposed to be wearing. You're supposed to be wearing very, I guess, Buddhist attire. So that is like a whiter robe, a straw hat, and you're supposed to be carrying this book. If you are doing the walk, of course, you'd have your backpack on. So you, I guess, that has all your water, your supplies that you need.
Yeah.
If you're doing the hike.
Important stuff.
Yes. But if you're taking the bus, which some people do, like, if you're old, you can't really do it,
Yeah.
So most of the time they just take the charter bus and they go from place to place. And what you do at the temple is you have to do the proper entrance. So that is you go up to the temple, you pretty much wash yourself beforehand, and then from there you are able to enter the shrine. You pay your respects, and then also the Buddhist monk that was there will sign off on the stamp. He'll give you a stamp, and then you go on to the next one. And there's 88 in total.
Okay.
And at the end of it, it's supposed to pretty much, a lot of people do this for, I guess, self-awareness. I guess it's a more of finding yourself. It's a moment that it is a pilgrimage for a reason.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it's pretty much supposed to be fulfill a desire that you want.
Okay, so I guess you're supposed to have gained something, maybe an inner peace or something like that by the end of this.
Or even like at the end, you're like, oh man, I want $1 million. Not saying that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But theoretically, that'd be a prayer
Mm-hmm.
that might come true by the end of it. But usually people will have like more. They have better prayers than that.
I'd hope so.
Yes, it is a pilgrimage, so it is more spiritual. It is more about the journey. It's more about kind of finding yourself through that. I know for me personally, since I've been doing backpacking, the longest backpacking trip I've ever done was to Mount Hood, which took me about 3 to 4 days doing the Timberline Trail, which is 40 miles around the mountain.
Oh.
Yes, it was very eye-opening. It was very beautiful. It was very difficult as well. There was a lot of incline, a lot of river crossings where one misstep and you were tumbling down a waterfall.
Oh, that's...
Yes, there was one that we actually were... It had like loose rock and gravel by the riverbed, so you pretty much had to scramble down, hopefully not fall into the water, and then cross a log and then go up the other side.
Oh, that's...
And if you would have fell into the water, you pretty much would have tumbled off the edge. It would have probably taken you over the edge.
That's very concerning.
Yes. But that aside, if you're just smart and you're very careful with it, you'll do fine. But still, it's kind of like, it was very difficult. And when I got to the end of it, it was so rewarding. Like the feeling that I had when I hit the end of the trail and I reached the car, I can't actually describe the feeling. It was just so, it was like a feeling of accomplishment, but also just pure happiness that it was something that you've done. It was just amazing, I think. And doing something that was only about 4 days, 40 miles.
Yeah.
This is a lot longer,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Like we could, like 2+ weeks, you said?
It was 16 days, I believe.
Yeah, so I wonder what the feeling's like.
Or, sorry,
Oh.
6 weeks.
Oh,
My
6
bad. But
Oh, yeah, no, that's going to be a whole different feeling.
yes, that is by walking. And it's just, I feel like by the end of it, you would definitely be a changed person. Whether that would be for the whole purpose of being a religious person, or it's just you're not religious and you just want to do the pilgrimage just to experience it, it probably would be worth it. It would definitely, by the end of it, you would definitely be changed.
That's for sure.
Other than that, that is kind of, I guess, that was the main thing I really wanted to talk about not just Kagawa, but the whole of Shikoku. Shikoku has that whole trail that we haven't mentioned in the other episodes. But yes, the ending is in Kagawa. So obviously that is the big thing.
Yeah. A quick question. Do you keep that stamp book or the book where you get all the stamps and markings?
I'm not sure. I would believe so. So I believe that it would be, you would take it and have each temple stamp it. And then when you get to the last one, you hand it to them, they stamp it. And I think after that, it's just a matter of doing one last ritual, I believe. And then I think that's it. I'm pretty sure you keep the book.
Okay. Be a nice little souvenir.
But I'm not entirely sure. I think it would be very nice. It'd be something that would be something you could remember it by. Like I know for a lot of people, by the time they hit the end of a big hike, they buy a souvenir to remember it by. Like for me, that Timberline Trail, I bought a shot glass of a bear that had Oregon on it. And then also like a magnet that said Timberline Trail. Yeah, it's just something that you can look at it and just kind of think back of, yes, I was actually able to do that. And I would imagine that the book would be the same way. However, I'm not entirely sure. They might demand that they take it or something. But I would imagine that you take it with you.
Well, that's something to find out in the future.
Yes, that's something I definitely want to do in the future. But I mean, it takes 6 weeks to do. But still. Next, I believe you did a lot of food for it.
Oh boy, did I. So Kagawa is known for a couple of foods, kind of like a lot of the prefectures are, like, for example, olives. But like the big dish is udon. Have you had udon before?
I have had American udon, so I would say probably no. I've had like very basic udon where it's just kind of I usually just eat the noodles and then leave everything else.
I don't blame you, because for anybody who doesn't know, udon noodles are kind of like the noodles that you use for ramen, but they are a lot thicker. Made out of what is it? Buckwheat flour, I believe. That similar to ramen, much thicker. They usually do different things with the broth compared to with ramen, which conveniently enough, the broth is the part that changes the most.
Oh,
So the one that typically I've eaten, and the one that most people would, is kind of like typical ramen, warm broth, usually served in a bowl, similar style. That I believe is called the Kake Udon style. And in that case, the broth is called the Kake Jiru, which is made out of soy sauce, mirin, and dashi, which dashi is the base stock for miso soup, conveniently.
it's like a fish stock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually tastes pretty good, too. Not the stock by itself, obviously.
What I was about to say, it
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah.
I've tried like a sip of the just straight stock itself that I've made, and I was just like, I pretty much spat it out immediately. I was like, oh my God. It pretty much is like, it's as if you were taking a sip out of like pure chicken stock. It's something that's good if you add something into it.
Yeah.
But it's nothing that you would just pour into a glass and drink.
Oh yeah, no, it's super concentrated. Would not recommend. But the big thing with udon is that the big difference is how the broth is prepared, because in some cases there isn't even a broth. But it's also whether it's served hot or cold. Cold, unsurprisingly, being more popular in the summer. Hot being preferred more in general, but also especially in the winter. And specifically, Kagawa itself has like two specialties I would describe when it comes to udon. The first being Kijoyu udon, which is basically udon served with like more dashi soy sauce, like more concentrated, less in the bowl itself.
Is it hot or cold?
I believe I believe it typically it's served cold, but I believe you can serve it both ways.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other one being called the Bukake udon, which is actually cold and has how would I put it? You put like garnishes on it. You have like I believe a light broth, not like very much, and then you pour dashi or splash dashi more specifically for the name. Bukake also means splash. Put it, basically splash it all over the udon, and you're ready to eat, basically.
Whoa.
And those are the two specialties. I have not had the fortune of trying it, but I'm very curious to see how having cold udon would taste compared to hot.
Yes, I know that soba noodles are very much a huge thing that is served cold in very traditional Japanese tea restaurants. However, I didn't know too much about udon being served cold as well. I thought that was more of the way I've seen people eat udon is they have the broth and then they give the udon noodles on the side, and then you like take the udon noodles, dip it in the broth, and then eat it. And usually the broth is hot. That's kind of how I've seen it. I've never had it like that. It's just I've only seen it like that.
So convenient that you mentioned that, because the next kind is called zaru udon, which is, in this case, it is cold, but you basically have this broth called suyu broth, and I believe it's similar to the kakejiru, which is with the soy sauce, your salt, I believe a bit of sugar, and the mirin. And you just do the dip. It's just cold noodles, you dip it, and it's a good time. As opposed, I think the big grab for it is very much the dipping sauce, because as opposed to like a broth, it's very diluted. The dipping sauce is more concentrated, has a more refined or present flavor, I guess you could argue.
Well, I would think so because you'd have to dip it in, so it'd also have to be able to stick to the noodles as you eat it.
Yeah.
Is there any else that goes with it, or is it just straight broth? Is there any kind of toppings? You know how ramen has like egg, onions, meat, stuff like that. Does udon still have the same thing, or is it just mostly just broth?
Well, here, I'll get to that one next. But in the case of Zaru udon, it's straight just udon noodles and dipping sauce, and that's it. The next one, though, is Shippoku udon, which is udon served in the winter with seasonal vegetables.
Oh.
So you basically just throw whatever was growing around the time, and congratulations, you got a whole different set of udon. I'm very curious to try because I also want to see what the vegetables taste like in a broth. But that's just me. The last one I want to talk about is Uchikomi Udon, which is udon cooked in a stew with other vegetables. So I guess in this case, it's less prepared as that you would typically, and it's just let's throw in a stew and let's pour it out and see what we get.
That's interesting because I know for the most part, a lot of other traditional like men, which is men means noodles.
Yeah,
in Japanese, they pretty much are always make it like cook it on the side and then add it. Even usually on ramen, you cook the ramen noodles and then you put it in the bowl and then you just pour the broth over it.
Yeah,
for the most part, and that's what I've seen for everything else is it's just served and cooked separately, and then you add stuff to it.
Yeah.
So do they add it towards the end? Because I would imagine so. Otherwise, the noodles would just break down and it'd be just nothing.
Yeah, pretty much the noodles themselves are already prepared, but like you give it the time to just soak in the flavors in the stew. Like it's pretty much them sitting in the broth is kind of like the last part, except just instead of being served immediately, it's just like let's just let that flavor marinate for a bit and we'll see what we can get. And I mean, those are the big ones that I could point out. I mean, I could talk about some smaller ones like curry udon, which is my personal favorite, but it's pretty much served in a similar style to kake udon, so I don't feel like it warrants as much of a explanation. Would I recommend udon? Yes. Udon is enjoyable. If you don't like thicker noodles, I understand it might not be for everybody in that case, but I would argue that the different styles and ways of preparing it really elevate it in my mind.
Out of the three, because there's soba, ramen, and then there is udon, which one is your top?
Oh, that's very tough. I'm gonna say ramen by just a small margin because I really like curry udon, but ramen itself, I've had just too many good bowls of ramen to just say udon is above it. So ramen's top, udon is just below it. Soba, I haven't had a chance to try yet. It's on my list of things to try.
Yeah, I haven't tried it either. I just know that that is very much like it's served as the dipping sauce on the side, and it's very much the noodles itself is the main dish. The main thing is the soba noodles, not too much of like ramen. You're eating it with the broth. It's all inside the broth. It's all inside a bowl that you are eating actively, I would imagine. But it is very much, from what I've seen, is soba noodles are very much, you just kind of delicately eat it over time.
Yeah. There are some other little nuances between ramen and soba that I don't want to get into in this episode because I'd be going off on a complete tangent. But yeah, it's something I'll definitely talk about at some other point because there's some other foods within that kind of family that I don't want to spoil the surprise for.
Definitely.
But moving away from food before I get too hungry, Thomas, you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
Well, as I said before, I am very much into nature. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is nature aspects. So there is a place called the Ritsurin, garden. And this is a garden that was made in 1745. And it's designated as a special place for scenic beauty in Japan. After seeing pictures of it, it actually is very gorgeous. It has a tea house, which from what I've seen is the main attraction of the garden. is for Japanese tea houses have always had a big thing in Japanese culture, which I will definitely talk about in another episode of the podcast, because it just take too long to talk about it. However, usually the whole point of it is to have like you're looking at different things as well. And usually you have breaks in between meals at the tea house when you're doing a very traditional tea ceremony. And during these breaks, you would go out into the garden and you would observe the garden. And gardens throughout Japan's history, even during the Heian period, have been a main focal point of, I guess, scenic beauty. Like during the Heian periods, there was big debates about whether or not to plant maple trees or cherry blossom trees, because whether or not you wanted your garden to be more beautiful in the fall or the spring, because cherry blossoms bloom in the spring, and that's why you'll see a lot of the times people are like, go during the spring, there's cherry blossoms. Or go during the fall because everything is red because the fall, like the leaves are changing colors. Same thing happened way back throughout the entire history of Japan.
So the care for aesthetic has been going on for quite a while.
Yes, there has been a lot of kind of debate on how your garden should look, and depending on how your garden will look, will show kind of your ranking, your status. And then you could also be like, oh, yes. Well, also, during Heian period Japan, they spent most of their time in their room.
Oh.
So if you're in your room all the time, especially now during COVID, you might look out the window, and that is mostly what you're looking out at. The same thing during Heian period Japan. They would be sat there in their room. They would open up their door and just look out into the garden. So you'd want a beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to be looking out at all the time.
Yeah, I'd prefer aesthetic pleasing over depressing.
Yes. So that's where this garden comes kind of into play. It's one of those very scenic gardens. There also during the later on in Japan's history, there's like kind of rock gardens that come into play, and there's like a little area. So like you'd see that has the patterns in the rocks and the pebbles.
Oh, yeah.
That is kind of like a rock garden. But what people don't realize, people think that, it's rocks. I can just do a quick pattern, leave it, we're good. That is very much wrong.
Oh, so there's more care required?
Well, yes, because there's a lot of weeds and stuff that come out during these rocks. So you are constantly raking rocks. So a lot of these Buddhist temples where you see a very pristine, beautiful kind of rock garden that has the beautiful patterns in it that you're like, wow, that's just so beautiful. There's a person that rakes that every single day. Every single day for like a couple hours, they are out there raking that pattern.
Oh, okay. So no wonder people get really, really touchy about those gardens. That's basically their pride and joy.
Yes, but also like let's say you run out on them and you mess it up. That's going to add on another 2 hours of raking. Because then you pretty much have to start all over. You can't just be like, oh, here's a section, whatever. There's footsteps, and now I have to go onto where it was. It's just, it becomes this whole thing where you have to pretty much redo it.
Oh, no, man.
Yes. And then moving kind of away from gardens a little bit, there is one of the most popular shrines in Japan, which is Kompita-san.
What's Kompita-san?
It is a shrine that was made for the god of the sea.
Oh, okay.
It has an extremely long staircase that leads up to it. It is about a total of 1,368 steps.
Oh, that's a big commitment.
Yes, it's pretty much on top of a mountain almost.
Oh, okay. So you're really just making the mountain journey if you want to go see it.
Yes. So it's the main temple itself is at the very top of it. Unlike when I was talking about the Henro pilgrimage, that's for Buddhism. This is for Shintoism.
Oh, okay.
And Shintoism is the more, I guess, the original Japanese religion that came out of. It's the study of or the worship of kami or gods. They're not really gods, but they kind of are.
Mm.
They are just like the minor type gods that they see that there's a deity in each little thing.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, there's the deity, the god of the sea.
Mm.
So they are right by the Japanese inland sea. So they would like pay respects to it so that they can maybe have a good haul in fishing or safe transport, across to the mainland.
Mm.
So yes, this is one of the biggest or the most popular
Mm.
shrines in Japan. Not the most, but one of the most.
Yeah.
It also has lots of cafes. So once you hit the top, there's now a lot of cafes, tea houses, souvenir shops, and of course, udon restaurants.
Hey.
Yes.
It's a little surprising to know that if I go to the top of a mountain, I'll find a udon restaurant. But I mean, if you made the journey, you kind of deserve it.
Apparently, you can also rent a palanquin. So a palanquin is like a box. You're pretty much being carried by two people on their shoulders. So there's a box that has two wooden posts that come out, and that they would put that on their shoulders. And you would be kind of crouched inside, and they would carry you around. I don't think it would be very comfortable at all.
That doesn't sound very pleasant. I'm not gonna lie.
It was how the daimyos of older Japan, like that's how they went everywhere.
Did
They wouldn't walk.
Yeah.
They would go in a palanquin.
Did they consider that comfortable, or was comfort just not the
It was.
worry?
I think it was more of the status
Oh, okay.
of being like, I'm being carried around. Ha 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 ha. I don't have to walk anywhere. I mean, I guess technically say if you're doing long journeys, it probably would be nice. So then you don't have to walk. You just carry around. But I'd imagine that'd be very bumpy because you got to think two guys,
Yeah.
or walking around, and then maybe if let's say if there's a pothole or something, or they're going down a hill, there's a lot more movement, and it is just a box. It's not like it's not a carriage or anything. It's just a small little box.
Sounds so flawed in so many different ways, but
Yes.
I guess if you want that status, by all means, have at it.
So yeah, that you can of course enjoy that. So, where would be your top place that you would want to go in this prefecture?
All right, so for Kagawa, I sort of kind of cheated, but not really, because I decided to go off the mainland to one of the smaller islands, more specifically Naoshima. Now, Naoshima is also known as the Art Island, created by or managed by the Benesi Corporation, as I understand it. Okay. The basic idea is that the whole island is in some way art exhibit. There are like art museums, art displays, basically everywhere. I believe the iconic image is this pumpkin that is displayed, I believe, near a dock called the Yayoi Kusama.
Oh.
Big yellow pumpkin, and it's very much kind of the symbol of the whole island.
A pumpkin?
Yeah, it's an art display. Was it? I actually forgot who specifically designed it. I believe it was Ando Tadao, who was the main architect for most of the exhibits on the island. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to mischaracterize that artwork, but that's who I believe did it. But yeah, so the whole concept of the art island is, like I said, is there are displays everywhere. For example, like what I would call the most typical art exhibit would be the Chichu Museum, which is a museum built in the hillside. It got displays outside, different forms of contemporary art, like some stuff that looks like nature, some stuff that looks very abstract. A lot of it is like physical art displayed outwards.
You say there was an architecture. So what, like, were they just like this? Like, did they just like get at the island and was like, wow, I'm going to do an art museum and make this art island from now on?
So as I understand it, Ando Tadao, I'm going to have to keep practicing saying that name, is a very well known architect. So he was commissioned by the Benesi Corporation, and basically they commissioned him to design most of the larger buildings. I mean, there are some other things outside of his specific influence, but a large portion of the new stuff that had been built was created by him.
Oh, so pretty much an organization was like, this is our island. Hey man, why don't you come over here? We'll pay you if you do a lot of art and architecture.
Yes and no. There are like a lot. There was like a lot of abandoned space, so it was kind of open for the picking. So,
Oh,
kind of like, for example, one of the big displays is also called the Art House Project, and the idea is it's basically just this whole abandoned district, and they basically just said, all right, the outside's gonna look like any other town, but the inside, artists, go ahead and do whatever you want. And so some of them look like they're very very like from different periods of Japan. Some can look like they're from 20 years ago. Some can look like they're from 300. And apparently the idea, as said by the website, is to invoke feelings of time passing. Another, like, I'd have to see it more specifically for myself because the pictures kind of like hit a lot of it, which makes sense. You don't want to ruin the surprise, I guess. Another way they did it is they treat it as like a catalyst for tourists to interact with the residents in a sort of way. I guess be talking points, commenting on maybe different points of history, kind of building up more of a community between people appreciating the displays as opposed to just residents and
art.
tourists.
Talking about art, because you could, like, even if you don't have the language, like Japanese, if you don't speak Japanese and you don't speak English, then you could still look at a picture and both enjoy it, and then just kind of maybe be like, point at, well, which one do you like, and just try to even just you will have even a basic conversation about, wow, I like this picture, and then someone else saying, yes, I do too.
Yep.
And then you could at least go from there.
Yeah, it's I like, I'll admit, as someone who is like not well versed in the art community and knows the terminology, I will say from what little bits that I was able to find on the websites, very aesthetically pleasing, very interesting. I can't say I could define the terminology, but I would say that it definitely would be worth looking at, in my opinion. But so you can spend the night at now SHIMA.
Oh,
Because conveniently they have the Benicy house. I wonder who owns that one. But yeah, the big kick on this one is that, like, it's a hotel as well as the art museum. But the big thing is that you can go to the art museum at any time if you're a guest.
nice.
24 hours a day. If you just think, you know what, it's 3 a.m, I can't sleep, I want to just go absorb some of the art, you can just do that. And as I understand it, like, there's kind of like a big area that's kind of on display. Like, there's the museum itself, this oval, which from what I saw from the pictures is very, very calming from what I saw. Then of course there's a park, and finally a beach. And so
Nice.
those are like the 4 parts that I guess you can stay in and kind of, examine the art, take it in.
Is there any extra, like, pay for it? Like, if you just book a room, is everything included, or do you have to, like, or is it like extra, to get like a pass that you can just enter everything?
As I understand it, if you pay for the room, it's you're golden. It's yours. As for whether they like, the museum itself is open for people, but like, if you are a guest, you get the right. I didn't look up the pricing, but it would not shock me to find out it would be on the pricier side to have 24-hour access to a museum.
I would imagine so. I mean, even just going to a museum is kind of relatively, expensive, but let alone an art, like 24/7 art museum.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, just kind of wrapping up my thoughts, like, just a large art exhibit. That's the best way I could describe it. It's just an island that's been repurposed into an art exhibit. If you basically go anywhere on the island, you can find probably some art display somewhere. Even in a bathhouse, apparently. Last thing I want to hit on, not really want to go into too much detail, but apparently they have a bathhouse called, conveniently, I Love You.
Oh,
Yeah. And apparently the big thing is that it has like a ton of like different picture displays, a lot of like flyers and stuff like hanging everywhere, including erotica. Have not seen it, pictures to confirm or deny that. Just what I found out about it. but the idea is that it's meant to be a homage to apparently Otake Shinoda's scrapbook art style, because apparently that was the way he designed a lot of his art, I guess, to be busy,
Okay.
kind of fly. The reason I want to bring it up is just like kind of give an example of like outside, like even though I talked about Ando Tadao's, influence on a large part of the island's art design, there are like different artists who are influencing the art that is shown off in the island. So even in a bathhouse, you can find art in a very strange kind of way, but it's there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, I'd argue.
I bet. Yeah.
But Thomas, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about specifically in your place of travel?
Yes. So while I was looking at places I wanted to go, I found there was a Takia Shrine. And Takia Shrine is this shrine that's also on top of a mountain.
Of course it is.
But I found that the view is just so stunning that it's just something you cannot possibly pass up. It overlooks the entire city, and you can see the inland sea. It is also known as Tori in the sky, or Tori in the sky, which a Tori is, how do I describe it? It's one of those, the red wooden arch structures that you would see maybe in anime or something like that near a shrine.
Oh yeah, the large red gates.
Yes, exactly. Those are called Tori. And at the top of this, there's a big white one that overlooks pretty much everything. His view is just so stunning. I just saw some pictures of it, and it was just breathtaking on how much you can see and how gorgeous it is. It also, you don't have to actually climb up the mountain.
Of course you don't. There's the catch.
You can actually drive up the mountain to a parking lot, and then you go up a little ways to the shrine. The shrine is also supposed to bring good fortune, as in money.
Well, at least they're honest about it.
So if you want to, I think it is called, if you want to carry more money, then you would also pay respects at this shrine.
Oh.
Yes. So, but yes, it overlooks the city of Kanoji and the Seto Sea. And it's breathtaking because you could also see the mountains throughout, like pretty much throughout Shikoku. It is very much pretty much the viewpoint of the prefecture.
Wow.
Yes, it is just so breathtaking that yes, I would have to go there.
That sounds pretty amazing. But if I were to walk, about how long would that take me?
If you were a very physically fit person,
Which I am not.
it would probably take you about 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's not bad then.
It's not bad at all.
Okay.
If you were like after quarantine fit, then you would probably be about, it'd probably take you about 20 minutes to get to the top at most.
Yeah.
That's if you're literally stopping and taking a breath every like 5 minutes. But it is very steep. I will say it is steep. It does go up.
Yeah. It's not a gradual. It's very vertical, I'm guessing.
Yes, it is very much like, let's go. Let's go to the top.
And that's kind of the trend I believe we talked about during the SHIMA episode, that a lot of the trails are just kind of like you're going for it one way or another, right?
Well, a lot of the trails here in America have switchbacks. So those are kind of like zigzags up a mountain. Versus Japan, they just do a trail straight up. Like where America would do like zigzags, it's just a straight line in Japan.
I mean, I guess that's direct, but also it's very tiring, I'd imagine.
Yes, but you got to think that for the most part, the culture is very physically fit. And the American culture is not as physically fit to say, like, but yeah, even like for me personally, when I'm hiking, I always dread switchbacks because you're covering a lot more distance versus if it was like a straight up, you were just going straight up. That is less distance, but more incline, I guess. So out of the two, I think I would actually prefer the straight line, like the Japanese way of the trails. That being said, I have not been on a trail in Japan, so I can't just be like, oh yes, it will be better. But in theory, I would imagine it would be better.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I think, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Not that I have any specific notes on. I would like to say I am curious at some point to go to the art museum myself, but also specifically, I want to see if I can hike one of those vertical trails going straight up. I am not fit. I will wholly admit that, but it sounds like a good way to start getting fit.
Yes, there's actually a lot of, I guess, Japanese elderly that pretty much hike a mountain in the morning to stay physically fit.
Man, what a flex, honestly.
That's what I think. But, climbing a mountain every morning, you will be fit.
Yeah.
There is no doubt about it.
You'll definitely get good at it.
Yes. So, other than that, I think that is everything for Kagawa.
Yep, works. It's everything on my notes.
Yes. So, thank you, everyone. So far, we've also been, we've pretty much just put up our social media aspect of everything. So, go ahead and look us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Distant Tourists. We are also on Instagram at distant_tourists. And everywhere else, you would kind of look us up. We will be there on social media. So, yeah. Next week, we're going to be tackling Osaka, and we're going to be having our friend Jake on as a guest, and we're going to be talking about that. So, until next time, thank you guys for listening.
See you guys.
Bye.